Ja, wenn Ihnen der Film gefallen hat, können Sie hier den QR-Code scannen und abstimmen für unseren Audience Award. Wir haben jetzt ein Online-Gespräch mit der Filmemacherin Jascha Kadandara. So nice that you are here in our cinema, at least online. So welcome to Munich. Maybe we give a round of applause to Jascha Kadandara for her film MATABELELAND. We just watched your film, and there already came some questions up while we were waiting for you. So thank you for taking the time and talking to us. I just start with a few questions, and then you can also jump in as the audience. Yeah, with your film, you touched on a very sad but and not much spoken about topic in your country, in your history, the Kukurandi massacre of the Ndebele. And I just wanted to know, why did you think that it was about time to talk about it and to document it? Was it that when Mugabe got out of power, or did you have the feeling already before that? Or just like when time was ready for it?
Like many filmmakers in Zimbabwe, they had wanted to talk about this or make a film about it. But I think for me personally, it started with first filming the coup that happened in 2017, which is when Mugabe stopped being our president. And then soon after, he actually did pass away. But I think there was a change in the country and people wanted to know what could we do different. And there was hope and people were trying to do new things that they hadn't been able to do previously under the regime. So for me, that meant picking up my camera. For other people, it meant running in elections, participating in different things. A lot of people were moving back to Zimbabwe who had been abroad before that. So for me, it meant just making the film. And the region is where I'm from. So it was very personal and I felt like I had to.
Yeah, it just brings me to a question which came up while we were waiting. The question was, are you related to Chris? Because you're saying you're Ndebele as well. Is he part of your family, or?
No, I'm not Ndebele. I'm Shona, which is a different tribe in Zimbabwe. I grew up in MATABELELAND. I mean, people grow up in different places regardless of whether they're actually from there. But that's where I was born and that's where I was raised. And that's the part of Zimbabwe that I connected the most. So that's the reason why. I met Chris through Sherry, who does the exhumations. And we really wanted to talk about reburials and why they were important. And she said, I think there's someone that might be interested that you could talk to. And then when I met Chris, and I also learned that he was an immigrant, he just started to portray a lot more of what a lot of Zimbabweans have experienced, about the economic strife, the politics, Gukurahundi, being an immigrant. So then it became really interesting to follow his life.
And yeah, you can follow him quite closely. I think you got into his life so much. It's amazing. How or when did you decide to tell his very personal story? I mean, the film is also a love story between him and Dumi. So when did you think this is also a good decision to bring it in? And how did Chris and Dumi react to that?
Initially, I think, and there was a lot of pressure even from funders, and I think what people already knew about Zimbabwe to make the film more political. And you even had a desire from some people to be like, why can't he be an activist? Why can't he go to the government and say, I want my father's bones, and protest? But Chris isn't that kind of person. But that doesn't mean his story is not important and not worth telling. So we kept filming him, but then when I met Dumi, I think that's when things really changed in terms of the direction of the film, because as you say, it's a love story, and she really was the mirror of a lot of the trauma that he had experienced. So many things that he couldn't say, that he couldn't articulate his feelings. A lot of that showed in his conversations with her and with his children. And I think from then on, we knew, okay, we need to make this more of a portrait of African masculinity and focus on Chris, less on the politics and more on the very personal side. And I think also it was important that we could have made a film that was a lot more political and talked about sort of what people experience in general numbers. And so even when people talk about the 20,000, for us, it was really important to put a face to that and like a family to that 20,000 and like who did Julius Mvulonyati belong to, who misses him, who were the people that called him mother, or rather father, brother, cousin, dad, son. So it was important for us to show that. And so I think that's why we really understood that the heart or the voice of the film was a personal one.
Yeah, really great. I'm very thankful that you made this decision because I think the film tells so much also about a society who needs healing and how a film can also help in doing that, or like to see the whole healing process and yeah, kind of facing the trauma they have experienced. So um, would you say, would you also say that your film could help the communities in the Zimbabwean society to kind of deal with the trauma and heal as well?
Definitely. I mean, I don't think it's just specific to the Zimbabwean audience. I think a lot of people who've experienced grief, a lot of people unfortunately have experienced statewide sponsored um, atrocities that have led to maybe not knowing where somebody is. I feel like even in Africa today, we have elections and people disappear. Those disappeared people, their grandchildren or children are going to be like Chris. So I think it's a very relevant topical issue even just now. But I think what I've noticed from people watching it is for a lot of people, it has been very cathartic. There are people who have come and said, you know, we tried to find our father and we didn't find him. I think there's a lot of people who just like want to see the acknowledgement of what they experienced. And I think a lot of people just like to see a slice of Zimbabwean life that they just haven't seen on TV that is so familiar to them because someone like Chris is a very familiar character. He's either their dad or their uncle, but you don't see that kind of representation in the films that often get a big platform or get onto streamers. And so I think even just that very basic level, oh, I relate to that. We do that too in our culture. Is so important for people.
Mm. And you just mentioned before that this is also about masculinity, a film about masculinity. So when did this then come up to you? When did you realize that you made a film about, is it Zimbabwean or African masculinity, or what does it explain in that sense?
I think we usually generally say African masculinity because we've had people who are outside of Zimbabwe really connect to this particular theme of fatherhood or just this generation of man and their relationships and how he struggles to articulate his feelings, but also how he feels, you know, a man's job is to honor his father and that's why he has to bury him or he has to protect his family. Or the pressures that are given to sort of the eldest in the family, the eldest boy. I think a lot of people have connected to this. I wouldn't say this is something I went out to highlight at the beginning of the film. But I think as a filmmaker, you always go in with your intentions, hopefully good, and your idea of what you want to make, and then the film will tell you what it is.
It's a journey, yes. So are there questions from the audience? There's a mic. My colleague can come up to you. And ja, they're in the front. Weil wir müssen kurz warten, weil sonst kann sie es nicht hören. Okay, here we go again.
Yeah, hi. What is life like today in Zimbabwe, really? I mean, after Mugabe's death.
I think a lot of it is some steps forward, some steps back. And depending on who you ask, they'll tell you they've had more steps forward or more steps back. I think it's difficult it was an opening, and I think it was a much more hopeful time that happened just after the coup. So I would say leading up to maybe 2019, but I think also the pandemic has put pressure on a lot of countries, and then like trying to come out of that. Now we're dealing with a recession. I think life continues to be difficult. I think unemployment is high. I think media freedom is not free. So a film like this is actually quite hard to show in Zimbabwe right now, unfortunately. The government is quite sensitive about what is said about them, even past Mugabe's era. So I think at the same time, people are trying to progress. They're not quite happy. I think for people, particularly like Chris's family who were affected by Kukrahundi, they're still waiting for just a very legitimate, simple sorry. Like just a very clear apology, which has never really happened. Currently, the government is undertaking some hearings, and they say they want to hear from different people, but it hasn't been a successful campaign. Ideally, a film like this would have actually been good to travel with this campaign to help people sort of open up and encourage them to talk about their feelings, but that hasn't been the case. So yeah, we're still hoping, but it's not where any of us would like to be.
Mm. So did you propose to them to travel with the film through the country and be part of the process?
We have, and they feel that the film will interfere with the process.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there was another question.
Hey, hello. My question is regarding the reburial as a process of healing transgenerational trauma. So I feel this is it's one step, right? It's one part of a process of healing, but healing is never an event, it's a process. And I wonder, how did you experience it? Do you feel that the family, that there is like a relief felt within the family, or did they kind of grew together in different ways or support each other after this reburial and this experience of it?
As you explained, grief is an ongoing process for anybody, even in the sort of best of circumstances. The reburial itself was a very cathartic experience, and even though it was quite sad, there was also a lot of joy on the day because a lot of people, they felt they had accomplished something. Chris in particular was like, I have done right by my father, and really felt a sense of accomplishment. But then for him, really honoring his father is like a long process. It's not just the reburial. For instance, as you know in the film, he struggled with some of financial issues getting income from his previous employers. But every time he does get a payout, which isn't nearly enough for what he needs or what he is owed, he takes it and he's like, I'm going to buy bricks or cement for my two dad's homestead so he can rebuild it. And for him, I think there's a long process of different ways that he processes grief in terms of doing things to honor his father. For other members of his family, it's been a bit easier for them, I think. And I think even just having such a public reburial where people could come really helped them, and just having that community of just being able to publicly cry the way you would at any funeral.
Yeah, thank you. So a last question, maybe from the audience. No, that's not. I just wanted maybe one final question from my side. I think there's astonishing music, really beautiful music score in the film, and I wanted to ask you, why did you or when did you decide that you had to have this music composed for the film? And tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, we have a great soundtrack, which actually is available on Spotify and Apple Music. If anybody wants to listen to it, just search for MATABELELAND original soundtrack and you'll find it. We had as we were making the film, I had been collecting music. I'm one of those filmmakers who's always making playlists and inspired by songs. And there was some music that we really wanted to put in the film. But when it came to licensing, either we couldn't find the original people that own the music, or we just couldn't afford what we were being given as figures. You know, some people were quoting $25,000, and you're like, kind of like the budget of the film. So like, it's fine. So luckily, Dudu, who is a wonderful composer, had worked with my producer Sam Soko on another film that we both worked with called Free of Money, and had done such a good job. So we sort of brought it in very last minute, but he managed to really understand what we were trying to do and the kind of film we were trying to tell, and managed to weave this very beautiful melody that goes throughout the film. And yeah, I'm really grateful for his participation in the project and just, you know, coming on board very last minute, but then doing such an amazing job that's really conveyed the feeling. Because we get comments about the film pretty much at every festival, which is really nice and not very common. It's very special for a documentary. So we're really lucky that we've had that.
Yeah, very. And it's also underlining the great camera work. I hope you get also these comments, and you did it yourself, just to mention. And I have more questions, but I'm afraid we have to finish here. Congratulations again to your film, and a round of applause.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for everyone to massage the cafe anyway. You better enjoy the rest of the festival. Tell your friends about the film, and thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye bye.